Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the secret, high-stakes negotiations to end the war in Ukraine. We're going to piece this story together using leaked phone calls, military intelligence, and propaganda campaigns to figure out what a potential peace deal could really mean for the world. Okay, let's just dive right in with a bombshell, a leaked phone call. In this recording, a U.S. Special Envoy, Steve Witkoff, is apparently coaching a top Kremlin official on exactly how to praise the American president. He's literally feeding him the lines, telling him to call the president a man of peace, right before a crucial visit from Ukraine's president. This isn't just a friendly chat. This is high-level diplomatic stage management. And that one phone call, well, it brings us to the biggest question we're tackling today. In this incredibly high-stakes game of secret diplomacy, who is really pulling the strings? And believe me, the answer is a whole lot messier than you might think. So to really get what's happening in that phone call, we've got to zoom out. We need to look at the bigger picture. Because after 3 years of a brutal, grinding war, the battlefield and the political chessboard look completely different. And in this story, context is everything. So what's that context? Well, the reality on the ground is just grim. Military analysts are telling us that Russian forces are making these slow, agonizing, but steady advances. They're trying to cement their control over the territories they've annexed. And that is the brutal reality that's dragging everyone kicking and screaming back to the negotiating table.
And if you look at this timeline, you can see exactly when things started to shift. It's this perfect storm, right? You have Russian gains on the ground, and at the exact same time, a huge political shift in the West. A new U.S. president is elected on a promise to end the war, and bam, the entire focus shifts almost overnight from the battlefield to the back rooms of diplomacy. All right, so that brings us to the plans themselves. What's actually in these so-called peace deals, and who are the big names at the table? Let's break it down, because this is where things get really interesting.
And when you look at the players on this chessboard, it's a really fascinating mix. You've got the people you'd expect, like the U.S. Secretary of State. But honestly, the real game is being played by these back-channel operators, powerful Kremlin insiders and special American envoys meeting in secret, shaping the future of an entire continent. And this right here, this is the core of the problem. I mean, the two sides aren't just on different pages. They're in completely different books. For Russia, it's all about getting legal recognition for the land they've taken and locking in Ukraine's neutrality. These are their non-negotiables. But for Ukraine and its supporters, it's about stopping the killing first, then talking, and getting ironclad security guarantees for the future. It's a chasm that looks almost impossible to cross. You know, this fight isn't just happening on the battlefield or in secret meeting rooms. There is a whole other war going on. A war of words, a war for hearts and minds. Both sides are desperately trying to control the story. So, you have to ask, how is Moscow spinning all of this for the folks back home? Well, a group of Ukrainian analysts actually dug into Russian state media to see what messages were being pushed. And what they found was a very deliberate, very carefully constructed story. And what they found paints a really clear picture of the propaganda machine at work. The new U.S. president is presented as this kind of savior figure, the only one who can fix the so-called mistakes of the past. At the same time, Europe gets painted as the new enemy. It's a cynical but effective strategy. It justifies Russia's position and makes their demands seem like the only reasonable path to a peace that only one man can deliver. Okay, so while all this is happening behind the scenes, word starts to leak out. And in capitals all across Europe, well, let's just say panic is starting to set in. The thought of a U.S.-Russia deal being cooked up without them is sending shockwaves through the continent. Let's be crystal clear about Russia's public position, because it hasn't budged an inch. Publicly, their message is simple and unwavering: a neutral, demilitarized Ukraine. And for them, that's the bottom line. No compromises. But a lot of people in the West are looking at this and seeing a massive trap. They're saying these aren't real peace talks at all. It's a Trojan horse, a way for Putin to get through diplomacy what he couldn't fully get with his military, the effective capitulation of Ukraine. And you can really feel that fear across Europe. The nightmare scenario for them is a big deal getting cut between Washington and Moscow, right over their heads. They are terrified of being left on the sidelines while the security architecture of their own continent is redrawn without them. So what's the big idea from the American side? Why do this? Well, a lot of analysts point to something called a status quo policy. And really, that's just a fancy way of saying, let's hit the big reset button with Russia. Draw some clear lines in Europe, establish new spheres of influence, and then move on. The idea is to stabilize things there so America can shift its focus and its money to other problems around the world. And that leaves us right back where we started, with a huge looming question. Because one thing is for sure, ending the fighting and actually winning the peace are two very, very different things. The future of Ukraine, maybe even the future of Europe, is being written right now, not in trenches, but in whispers and secret phone calls. The only question left is, when the ink is dry, who will have won?